So let's have a quick look at the melody and how we can integrate the melody into the chords. There are many ways to go about this. For example, one thing we could do is simply practice playing the melody. So if we look at the melody of the first line, we have another thing we could do is we could go bar by bar, and as well as playing the chords, we could just add the melody in each bar. So you'll notice for some bars, we don't actually have to move the left hand at all. For example, the first bar, the melody goes C, E, and those notes are all under the chord. So the second bar, we have this D7 chord, and we actually don't play the whole chord, all the notes of the chord at the same time as we did when we were playing through the chords. We just play the lower two notes because that's our melody note. Then we have to kind of let go of the chord or stretch. I just let go to come back for the A. Then we have our two G chords. We've got the regular G chord with the melody on the second string, and then we've got our G7 over B. And again here, if you're holding the chord like that, you don't need to move your left hand. You can think of it as one chord just being arpeggiated with the outside notes and then the inside note. And then we have the C sus chord and the regular C major chord. I don't play the bass note again. So we play the C sus going to C major. So if we run through that, we've got bar 1, bar 2, bar 3 with a changing bass note, and then bar 4. If we have a look at the next line, just playing the melody. So that takes us to the start of the third line. So if I play that again, that's just the second line. Now what we could do is we could look bar by bar to add the chords. So we never want to lift too much new information. It's like lifting a weight. We don't want to add too much weight at once. So if we're going to do a lot of density, if we're going to do chord and melody, it's nice to just go bar by bar. And if we're going to just do a thin line, it's nice to span a longer distance and look at the whole line. So let's go bar by bar. That first bar was this chord, which looks like an E minor chord, or E minor over B. But we kind of hear it as a C over B, C major 7 over B. And after the bass note, every other note is a melody note. Then we've got our A minor 7, the sus. So if you think of an A minor chord, we're just playing a melody on the second string. And then we go up to the high E, and we have this C over G chord. And then we go down to an F major chord, and here we have a really interesting melody because we have this, it's kind of like an A flat, and then this big leap up there, and we go straight into the second line, straight into the next line like that. So it starts almost with an anticipation. The sync, the chord comes early. So we'd expect to hear 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And that sounds fine. But what Pat Metheny does, which sounds really cool, is he goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So this comes on the So if I just play through that, this is the second line. Bar 2, 3, bar 4. And that D is already at the start of the third line. So if we look from the third line, we have the D, D minor over C. Then we have this B minor 7 flat 5. And again, it's just the bass that we play on the first beat. And then we've got a G chord, and then an E7 over G sharp. And what Metheny does there, which is really cool, he plays with his thumb, and he kind of slides back from the D sharp to the D. So in the key of A minor, that's the blue note, that D sharp. It just sounds so good. There's lots of different ways you can do that. So if we look just at the melody of the third line, and that again plays us straight into the fourth line. Now if we go bar by bar, we've got the B minor 7 flat 5. Then in the next bar we've got the G major chord. It's a bit of a stretch. You can do a hinge bar, or you could slide back with finger 4 and go with finger 1. Now there are lots of different ways you can play this. You can just do a slide. You could do a... Whatever you do is going to sound cool. It's just such a good note. And then we come back to the A minor 7. So if we have a look at the last line now, we've got C over G, going to D minor, and if we have a look at the melody, here's the melody becomes a little bit unclear here because the chords, it becomes more cadential, more about a cadence, more about an ending, and so you can really play it however you like, because people, I think the ear is drawn more to the chords at this point. But if we have a look at one way of doing it, we're coming down from the D note. So that's quite a nice melody to start with. If we go bar by bar using the chords, that D comes with a C over G chord. So again, we're really not stepping much outside of the chord. We're just playing some notes on the second string and then jumping down to the G on the third string. Then we have this D minor over F chord. And we play the high note twice. And that note rings on into the next bar. And these two notes change, so they both step up. We go from playing an F and a D to playing a D and an F sharp, D sharp and an F sharp. So they both become sharp. And then in this bar, which is going to be the third bar of the last line, we have B, C, and then it resolves to what's really an E major chord. Except instead of going straight to the E chord, we've got that extra bar, which is really, it's like an E chord that's been moved up 1 fret. So its proper name is, of course, E sus4. There's the sus4 and flat 9. And there's no more melody notes. It just sits on this chord, and then this chord resolves. And what this chord tells us, more than anything, is that we're in the key of A minor. And so by the time we get here, we know that the piece isn't over. For it to be over, we'd have to land on A minor. So now the melody comes an octave higher, and the chords obviously all higher up on the fingerboard. And let's have a look at it the same way. We have to move around a lot more when we're up here on the neck. And that means we can't sustain the chords as easily. But it still sounds, the melody sings out really beautifully. So if I just play the melody of the first line, it's going to be... So as you can see, there's quite a lot of position changing. If we have a look bar by bar, we start with that A minor chord. Then we're going to play an E, but what we do is we actually change to a bar chord for that E. bigger bar chord because we're going to the D minor chord. Now over the D minor chord, the baby finger plays on the first string, those fret 8, 7, 5. So that's bar 1 and 2. Then we have our G chord. And we can't really hold that G chord while we're playing the melody. We have to just play it once, kind of like a chord melody in jazz. And then fly up to the 10th fret. And then we stay. So what you'll notice, what works really well is not changing position too often. It's better to do 1 or 2 big position changes rather than change very frequently. A good way to prove that is, for example, if you wanted to play all the notes on the first string. If you try it like this, see, it's very tiring, creates a lot of tension. But if you do it like this, it's much simpler. So even though we have bigger position shifts, we have only 2 of them. Whereas if we're changing all the time, it creates a lot of tension and it's nowhere near as accurate. So the same thing here, we move up to 7th position. We play 2 notes in 7th position. And then we come back to 3rd position. And that takes us to the last bar, where we have our C sus, and then C. So I'll just run through that as bar 1, bar 2, bar 3, and bar 4. We have a look at the next little bit of melody. Again, we're going to start on beat 2, so it's a 1. So here the melody, the rhythm of the melody changes a little bit, and we rush up to that high E. That's just something Pat Metheny does, and it's really cool, so we adopted that. So if I'm counting along, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that rhythm is the same as it was before, where it was. So it's exactly the same thing over here, where we anticipated the F. So let's run through that melody. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and. Now if we look bar by bar, we've got C over B. And again, we can't really hold the B for the whole bar because we've got to move up. Then we've got that A minor sus chord. And we rush up. And this chord, although we're just playing a G and an E, we're thinking of it, or I think of it as a C major over G chord. And we got there early, remember, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and we just hit that same chord again at the end of the bar, 4. And then we come to an F chord. And what Pat Metheny does here is halfway through the bar, he does the bass walking down. So he's going F, then F over E, just for a second. Then we've got to jump all the way up to the 15th fret. And we hit the G and the F. And then we walk the bass down D, C. And now we're on to the last bar of the line. We've got B. And we've got our D. We fly all the way up here. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 17th fret. We've got our G chord, E7 over B, and an A minor. And then this time, again, slight difference. So the first time we had A minor over here, and then we played the C, and then we went into the last line. Here what they do is A minor, and then a little hammer-on into the last line. There's a big position change, so we come C over G, we fly back for G, but that gets us in the perfect position for this chord, which is an F. got our B over F sharp, B7 over F sharp. And now things change. The melody drops down to a G, because remember the chords were different this time. It went to a G sus, then a regular G. And again, similarly to the end of the first half, the melody becomes, I feel, less important towards the end of the passage, towards the end of the theme, because it becomes more about the chords. But nevertheless, it's nice to have a clean melody. So we've got our B7 over F sharp. We slide up to 5th position, 7th fret. We do a hammer on, and now we come down to G, G sus. We just let that G ring on the top, and then we have the F with a C sus chord, and then going to a C chord. Now what you can do if you want to do a repeat of the low section is on the last bar, so that's the 19th bar. Halfway through the bar we change to a nice kind of E7 over B chord, and that takes us right back to the start. So what I will do is I'll just play through that melody again, just the last line of the melody. Now with the chords C over G, F, B7, G sus, and G, and C sus, and C, and then to E7, and then we can go back to the lower octave version, and it actually sounds really beautiful hearing it down the octave once you've heard it up the octave. So in a way, the first time we play the theme is kind of the least remarkable. Then we go up an octave, it sounds amazing, and then down an octave, and it sounds really cool to hear it low once we've heard it high. So the melody stays the same the whole way through, except on the very last line, C over G, again D minor over F, B7 over F sharp, and then it kind of changes to exactly what we played, or almost exactly what we played in the high version in the middle section. So we've got a G sus, and then a C sus4, and then we end on C major. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Everything we've done, you can view the tabs on Patreon, and there's also going to be a backing track if you don't have a bassist or a bass handy, and you can play along with the chords and the bass. And if you've enjoyed, please do consider subscribing, and we'll see you soon. Take care.